That sun looks pretty. I wanted to share a very deep and sort of nuanced and rather advanced, uh, whatever you want to call it, a consciousness teaching, a mindfulness teaching, a vantage point, a perspective, an understanding. And so, if you listen very carefully, and if you ever stop understanding, just go back 5 seconds or 10 seconds to whatever you missed and listen to it again. That will help you benefit from this, to help you digest it, to understand it, to grasp it. If you understand this early, it can make such a difference. The sooner one understands this, the sooner one prioritizes this, it makes such a difference. It allows us to actually experience inner peace and quiet and stillness and happiness that is independent of anything and anyone, of joy that is unconditional. So, if you consider the vantage point from which you live your life, and you consider it deeply, you'll find that this vantage point, this perspective, this positionality, this I that you live from, that you perceive all of life from, is very much like one big projection of how you want others to perceive you. This is very deep, and this is a very consistent or persistent quality of the ego. And everyone has ego, and quite a bit of it. And the more we understand ego, the more we heal ego, the more free we become, the more peace we can have, the more unconditional love we can experience in relationships. The more we can live a life of purpose from our heart and of service and gratitude. The more we can love life and death, love all of life, the coming and the going. So understanding this, understanding that the vantage point we typically see life from is one that is, in so many ways, projecting a self-image and attempting to present as that person to the world. So they have this idea, this self-image, this idea of who they want to be. And people, egos, very quickly convince themselves that that's who they are, this self-image. And the ego wants other people to perceive them that way, as that self-image, because the ego basically chooses an identity that it feels most safe with based on its past experiences. And so it will, and this identity is so multidimensional. even your negative emotions and the stories of sadness and guilt and shame and that you carry, that all people have, is actually chosen by the ego as an identity to wear, like clothing, for supposed protection, for survival. And it's not a conscious process. It's a process done from much less conscious parts of our system, fight or flight parts of our system, survival parts of our system, the root chakra, as some call it. And so these parts of us, these primal parts of us, tribal and primal parts of us, actually end up sort of determining how we present to the world and how we process life. Because not only do we attempt to present ourselves to others as this self-image that we feel is optimal, we also then try to defend that self-image. And so if anyone ever says anything about us or seems to interpret something about us in a way that we feel is inconsistent with our self-image, then typically we will attempt to fight or flight that by rejecting it or negating it or invalidating what the person said or trying to prove them wrong. Even if we're not doing it to their face, we might try to do it in our own personal lives. And a lot of people have, all people, their egos are layers and layers of these different strategies and ideas. And that's the core of our life strategies, fears, and beliefs stem from this process of conditioning, this process of being conditioned to believe that a certain identity is optimal because our dad was that way or our mom was that way or whatever. Because the commercials taught us that, because the cartoons we watched growing up showed us that. And you can see kids, when they start watching cartoons, they change. You can see that parts of the character in the cartoon, that the child starts to model that and becomes a part of that child. It's amazing. And of course, we're no different. We're grown-up children. So supposedly grown up. And we spend so much time and energy and effort trying to maintain this identity and self-image and social image. And it causes us pain. I don't know if you realize, but if you ever have an experience where you didn't get a result that you wanted, and you felt ashamed or guilty or bad about it, that's actually your self-image attacking you, your own self-image. If you look at your consciousness, this is what's happening. So it's so important and beneficial to get in touch with all attachments that we have to how we are perceived and how we perceive ourselves. So how others see us and how we see ourselves. All the attachments we have to that. And notice how so much of what you do throughout the day, so much of your ups and downs in emotion are based on this. And people are usually happy when things are happening that are in alignment with their conditioned self-image and social image and identity, and they get upset when things are not consistent with that and in alignment with it. And this drives emotions, and in the end of the day, it's only the self-image and social image that they're attached to, and their very attachment to it, that is creating the roller coaster of emotions, the ups and downs, and all of the obscuration and misunderstanding and ignorance and then negative karma that is derived from that. So self-image and social image, who we think we are, who we think of when we look in the mirror, that can be completely cleared, healed, and released, transcended. You can live without a self-image, without an identity. And doing so, by the way, is critical, is necessary to transcending the fear of death. Because as long as someone is identified with being an I, a person, an I, a me, an individual, then they will, in essence, experience separation and experience the illusions of life and death and fear death. When the mind that tries to separate everything into dualistic buckets, into zeros and ones, into goods and bads and truths and falses, into me and them, when the mind that imagines that we are a person who dies, when the mind creates that distinction between life and death, when the mind looks out at all of this stuff, all this energy, all this reality, and says, I need to organize it, and I need to make sense of it, and I need to know what's going on. And so it starts to categorize things and bucketize things, and then it literally creates its own illusion of death, and then fears it. So that must be transcended, and we can transcend it now, right now. You can do it, not completely and forever. That is possible. It's unlikely, and anything's possible. That said, you can begin to practice it and gradually make progress by moving into your heart and surrendering all thoughts. And doing so completely with all parts of your being, moving into your heart and surrendering all thoughts. And you can cultivate this practice and get better and better at it. And it's such a simple practice, and it brings so much benefit. We often get so lost in the process of analysis in the mind, and we end up living in there. And that becomes life, so much so that we go to nature and we want to play video games or read the news or on our phones, and that's not anything to judge. It's just a dynamic that everybody to some degree is wrapped up in, unless you've transcended all thoughts and you have a very quiet and still mind, which is unlikely. Very few people have reached that wonderful attainment. So it's interesting that in this process, what is being suggested is that you become fully conscious of your self-image, of your social image, and in that process that you must, in a way, separate yourself from it. Right now, your self-image and social image are a huge part of your process and your day, and you process life and interpret things and make decisions from that self-image and social image, and it is not your consciousness, it is not your soul, it is not who you really are. It is like that garment, that piece of clothing that you're wearing. And it's very much like an uncomfortable piece of clothing because it causes suffering. This ego that we're describing causes all suffering. Self-image causes suffering. Social image causes suffering. Any image or belief that we carry inevitably will contradict with the dynamic and uncontrollable nature of reality. And so and when it does, which happens many times a day, we experience negative emotions and fear. So beginning to develop this sense of separation from your self-image, the sense of surrendering your self-image, of letting go of your attachment to it completely, your self-image and your social image, how you see yourself and how you want others to see you. will really, it's like getting on a bicycle. And you've never had a bicycle before, and you've had to run long distances every day to get to places, and now you have a bicycle. And you can move so much faster with so much ease, and now there's a breeze. It's so nice. So that's the effect that releasing your tight grip on your self-image and your social image, that's the effect that it has. It is like in your process of healing your pain and suffering, in your process of experiencing more joy and more inner peace, it is just an absolutely necessary and beneficial step, and a catalytic step. It is a step that leads to more rapid positive transformation. It's like oil to grease up the wheels so that they can spin more freely.